You're listening to Nakedly Examined Music, a podcast about songs and songwriters. My name is Mark Lintonmeyer. My guest for episode 220 is Jah Wobble. His real name is John Wardle. He was named Jah Wobble, according to him, by Sid Vicious because he was a teenage friend of the Sex Pistols, and when they broke up and John Lydon started Public Image Ltd. In 1978, Jah picked up the bass right then and there, and he wrote the foundational line for the song you are hearing right now, Public Image, PiL's first single released on their first album. Jah was only in that band for their first two albums, and he even recorded his first solo single while still in the band, and immediately in 1980 recorded his first solo album. He's since recorded a lot, more than 50 albums, generally multiple albums a year. Some are just under his name, where he plays or programs most of all the instruments. Usually he is a band leader. Often his band is called Invaders of the Heart. He's had several different lineups of that, but also Deep Space, the Modern Jazz Ensemble, The Human Condition. He was in a supergroup in the early aughts called The Damage Manual with one of my past guests, Chris Connolly. He's done a lot of work in world music, working especially with Chinese music, thanks in part to his second wife, Zeelan. He has collaborated with Bill Laswell, with singer Julie Campbell, Brian Eno. One of his early LPs was a collaboration with The Edge from U2. Today we're going to talk about A Brief History of Now, the album from 2023, his song Last Exit from that. Then we'll look at one of his purely solo efforts, The Bus Routes of South London, also from 2023. The track I picked off of that is 21 Towards Lewisham Shopping Centre. Then we'll look to a recent Jah Wobble and Invaders of the Heart work from Ocean Blue Waves 2019. Song is Fly Away. Then look all the way back to Blowout, a single from 1985. And finally, we'll listen to Visions of You by Jah Wobble's Invaders of the Heart featuring Sinead O'Connor from Rising Above Bedlam 1991. For more information, please see jahwobble.com. For more about this podcast, see nakedlyexaminedmusic.com. And to support my efforts, get ad-free episodes and my notes to the songs, including lyrics and structures and arrangement details, at patreon.com/nakedlyexaminedmusic. So I will play a little bit of Public Image from the first Public Image Ltd. album, just to orient folks, the thing that you were first famous for. We're going to get pretty quickly to the new stuff. I hesitate to ask you for even an outline of a story between those two things, but I have just listened to you reading your autobiography. So see if this makes sense, that after just a couple PiL albums, we've got some immediate solo action, doing a lot of drinking, taking a little time off, getting back into it, mostly with the Invaders of the Heart, but then expanding to just now you're putting out 3 or 4 albums a year in different genres with different groups of people and have access to your own studio. And that gets us to the present date. How's that for a...
Yeah, that's about right, actually. A lot of people make the mistake of thinking I stopped drinking and then I stopped playing music for a few years. It's not true. I only took a break of about a month before I was back making music, albeit part-time. It's a fair summation of my hazard career.
All right. Well, the thing that I was invited to promote here is the album A Brief History of Now. So I just picked the first single off that, Last Exit. I thought was a really, got at some important elements of your work. Can we say a couple words about where you are with this album, which actually came out last July? You've already recorded 4 more albums or something since then. But in any case, this is our example of the most recent work that we're focusing on. Last
Exit actually was a self-consciously post-punk album. And so you hear there with a bass line, it's not unlike, I wouldn't have been able to play a bass line as fast as that with PiL. And I'm terrified of having to play that song live because trying to play that bass line and sing at the same time is terrible. I do a bit of singing, live, playing bass. It's not the easiest of things, but that track would be particularly hard. But it was, very much a post-punk kind of record. So it harkens back to Public Image, really. I haven't done new stuff like that for many years. The last post-punk record I did was with Lone Lady, Julie Campbell, and that was a few years back now.
The Butterfly album? No,
there's another album called Psychic Life. That's pretty post-punk. And with this, the lyrics is very American. That was kind of the first starting point because it's for an American label, Cleopatra probably. I was very inspired by American literature, Salinger and Steinbeck and people, and, the book Last Exit and stuff. So I was very taken as a young man with American modern literature. So that is also a kind of an input into this as an inspiration as well.
Breaking free, ASAP, take the knee, 1, 2, 3, never carefree. Chasing the moon, a veritable boon. On Benny's in a rush into Denny's, hot dog and crowds. There's no doubt, who's the honey with the bright shining eyes? Easy money, and with delicious cries, another love dies. Making friction, making friction, making friction, making fiction. Down in the Lower East Side and back, jarring clash. Renegade smash, Hershey bar and a fancy car. Turning tricks with fancy licks. Scientifically proven, toothing paste, a winning smile to hide the bile, to hide the pain. What's a lonely life on a lonely plane? This is America. A yoga class beckons, got to make the gates, it closes in seconds. Waiting in the shadows, chewing gum with cheap handgun. Saturday night special, impulsive, not judicial. To Brooklyn, a world to never looking. Last exit to Brooklyn, a world to never looking. At this point, at least in the Lower East Side, someone shot, they nearly died. Cheap music biz hustler, like a Wild West rustler. Cheap punk, America, exhilarating adrenaline rush. Las Vegas, straight flush.
Let's start with the bass, as we must. You describe in your book, there's not a lot in your book about the mechanics of even, do you play keyboards? How much of it's just, I have a bass line, I worship the bass line, I turn off the high end and the mid on the bass, and that is the highest thing in the mix. And that is the center of, through all the different genres that, that seems not everything. In fact, one of the songs that we're going to look at the end, Blowout, I think is using synth bass. At least it's a different approach. But this seems like the thing that holds it together, whether you're putting guitars and have a structure like this one and vocals, or whether it's just a 9-minute jam. Any thoughts about how this bass line came? Is your phone full of individual bass lines that you then pull out?
There's a few on the phone, if I can be bothered. I run a community music thing, so I'm often making bass lines up there, and if I can be bothered, I'll put the phone on to record them. But I never go back to redo them, to be fair. So I've always got a line in my head, and this one's, I must have felt particularly energetic that day. The track started with the bass line, this, last exit, and it's very pumped up. It's very fast, it's very urgent, very driving kind of nervous vibe to it, So it's often with the bass lines, they're fueled by a kind of nervous energy. So the nervous energy goes out into the bass line, and then you kind of leaves you in a calmer kind of state, funnily enough. The track started with that bass line, and I sometimes get into a thing of playing like a sample. If you listen to it, it's like a regenerating bass line. It's played like a sample. It's quite a tricky bass line to play.
Yeah, well, I was thinking, like, I talked to Bruce Thomas from the Attractions, and I think it was the Pump It Up, the boo 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 boo, where he said he actually was doing like just straightening that out, taking a Duke Ellington thing. And that's sort of what I'm hearing is this dynamic character of this. It seems to sort of intentionally not confuse, but be a little too complex to really focus on the high and low jumps in there. Try to describe these things. This is the whole point of this podcast. It's very difficult to say anything.
It's pretty in one area that I vaguely remember. It's in one area of the fret. So it's not going all up and down the frets. I try to, as much as I can, to keep my bass lines within the box, as they call it. So you're within 3 frets, basically, and you can cover a lot with that. With this one, it modulates a bit within the line, but it's pretty much in the same, it's in a very definite key. I can't remember if it was A or G or E, it might have been, I can't remember, but it's do-do-do-do-do-do. You could boil it down to a drum. Do-do-do-do-do-do-do. In a very definite key. So it's not like modulating all over the shop or anything, it's quite basic, but quite fiddly. If you were to learn it, it would take most people a minute to learn it. It's quite a fast, complex little line.
All right. So once you got that down, tell me about how you're coming up with the rest of this palette, these particular synth sounds and what the guitar is going to be doing and etc.
Well, we put some changes in there. And I think with this one, probably John Klein put the guitar down. We got some melodic idea with keyboards. And then I would have got some lyrics together, and it's just very much, it's quite spoken. It's almost a rap, the lyric. Again, it's quite complex. And
sure,
painting a picture of like American life. Like I say, it was really inspired by modern American literature when I was a kid, when I was a young man. So the lyrics were a big part of it. So you got this image after image, which I guess is a little bit like David Bowie, that scene in The Man Who Fell to Earth when he's looking at a whole bank of TV sets. And it was really a shocking scene at the time that somebody would be watching all this bank of TV screens. But that's now, of course, what we're actually like. That's the modern world now, all these years later, the digital age, inundated with content coming from all directions. And I wanted to capture that in the lyric a bit, so it's just strident image after strident image after vivid image after vivid image, bang, 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 So that's the idea lyrically.
And like a lot of effective sort of rap adjacent music, then you break into the nice sung chorus. What are the actual lyrics? Is the first line in Chinese or something? What are you trying to say there?
Out of body floating high.
Out of body floating high. There we go.
So this is it, to fade and die. And the kind of image I had then was of being on a gurney. I think you Americans call them, don't you? Like hospital trolley, and kind of out of body experience, which we actually did use that image in the video. And then all the other scientifically proven toothing paste, the winning smile to hide the pain, what lonely life and a lonely plane. So it's, think of the planes, the high plains, high Sierras. This is America, glorious esoterica, which it is, all this crazy stuff. A yoga class beckons, peaceful. But I've got to make the gate. It closes in seconds, so it's sort of onrush. But yeah, it's a very simple out of body floating high. So this is it, to fade and die. So it's as if you're
very cheery.
When you go into that kind of consciousness, near death, which I hope, touch wood, I don't do it for a while, you're observing all this movement. The movement moves further away. this crazy movement of the mind, which is external as well.
Yeah, usually something like this that is throwing out sort of how the crassness of America, I would think this is some sort of social commentary, but it seems like it's not really, because this is a more existential, as you're kind of describing it here.
Well, it could be describing Western society. It's not a criticism of America or anything. It's just what is. And samsara is beautiful in a way. It's all empty. It's all just stuff arising. It's not like it's real. Nothing has inherent existence. My body doesn't, my mind doesn't. Maybe the consciousness pertains to the witnessing presence does, but I don't have it. It's glass. This doesn't have an inherent existence. It's only existing dependent on arising causes and within the context of our understanding of it. That's how it's life's quite fragile in a way. It's obviously very temporary. So it's beautiful, all this stuff, it's just lovely, as much as anything. So it's exhilarating, isn't it? It's got an exhilarating side to it, modern life, with the fast-moving imagery and everything, It's but ultimately illusory because that witnessing presence doesn't go anywhere.
It's a different kind of social commentary. So if you're talking about the shallowness, a winning smile to hide the bile, to hide the pain, what a lonely life in a lonely plain. If everything is illusory, then the alternative, it's not that we need to acknowledge the pain, because that would be a more honest, I don't know, I'm putting words in your mouth here and I'm rethinking them as I'm saying them. But if everything is, as you say, is illusory, then what really is there to complain about, right? We're all going to die anyway. You can't get too vehement.
It's kind of empty. And if you're not buying into it and you're not part of the movement, you're observing the movie and it's exhilarating. And at times you really believe in the movie and you're thinking it's really happening, but it is a movie and you're observing it. And then there's another version of you that's sitting at the back of the cinema watching you watch the movie. And that's where the stillness really resides, some sort of presence. So yeah, it just is what it is in life. There's movement and it's beautiful. A couple of people thought it was a kind of criticism of America or the West, and it's just so corny. I'm angry about modern life. We should all live in a teepee. I'm really not that guy, believe me.
So at the same time, this song has a very polished sheen on it that's unlike a lot of what you put out. That a lot of what you put out is, I'm centered on the bass line, I'm worshiping the bass line, I have the other musicians around me that are then expressing themselves from the depths of their souls, and it might go on for 20 minutes. But this is a very compact, and in the end result, you've added all these things, these little echoes on some of the words. You just added lots of little touches in the production to make it really go over smoothly and in a really interesting way.
It's a post-punk record, so it's going to have guitars. Not all my stuff. I'm not mad on guitars at times, but this is going to be a guitar on it. And we want it to be very powerful, but we want it to be well produced, high production value. And I'm not against high. Sometimes you want high production values. You want your record to sound like a Rolls Royce record sometimes. You want it to have real power and grace and all that. And other times you don't. Other times you would want a little bit more lo-fi. You still want the bottom end, but you want it a little bit, maybe a bit more grainy sometimes.
So are you the guy that is doing the final layering and let's add a little bit of echo to that word? Or are you working with another engineer?
I'm working with John Klein. John's great. And I'm the delay guy. So I'll be the guy saying, let's put a delay on the old guitar. And I'm very particular about the kind of delays that I would want. It's a little triplet delay. I like tape echo, so it decays. But on this, it's not a dub record, so, didn't want to put a huge amount, but you'll hear a little bit of reverb on the bass at the beginning. That's a technique that I use at times. You don't want your bass reverbed all the time. Something like Money by the OJs, you hear there's bass in the introduction, and then they put a bit of reverb on it. And so I think that's always influenced me a bit over the years at times with some introductions with the bass. Chuck a little bit of echo, a little bit of reverb on it, We wanted it to be a well-produced record. So John Klein is a guitarist. He's technically very good as well. He makes videos. He's a perfectionist guy. So you wouldn't get away with having any distortion on a record if you're making it with John. He'd far too OCD about it. So it has to be really smooth and kind of glossy. And that's fine.
Yeah, it's always interesting combining a distorted guitar sound with that. Everything has to stand out. It can't be a 90s alternative rock wash.
Yeah.
It's got to be an 80s use of distortion, if that makes. Let me play a little bit from 231.
Straight flush.
With this guitar break here. So, I mean, was that just pure John's brainchild there or what?
I think we would have discussed, like, let's have something a bit jarring because it's a really clever part. It's in a kind of going in a different key. So it's really discordant, that little solo, before those big double tracked heavy metal guitars come in, like Rolling Thunder. So it's very much a discordant, dystopian little part, matching dystopian kind of lyrics. So it's crafted, make no mistake. It's not just put together.
With the vocal layering on this, did you just do all those parts or did you have your wife or somebody else come in and do the high part? Do you even recall at this point?
Actually, John's wife did some backing vocals on it, and John would have done some, I think, but certainly Keiko, his wife, would have done some. She did a lot of the backing vocals on this album. So you get that. I like female backing vocals. They're up high, layered up. It's a very well-produced record. This is a great production.
Let me highlight near the end. This is 348. Just that ending on that really interesting vocal chord. Again, was that just whoever's laying down the backing vocals, or, you know, if John's running the session, that he's determining that that's happening? Or did you have a particular way you wanted to end this?
It could be John sometimes with that, you know, we work together, but that was me, actually. I was getting the semitone kind of step downs, you know. But yeah, John's somebody I listen to, and John will often, if I'm working with him, he'll often sort of, I've got this idea for this. And it's normally a good idea, so I'm not terribly precious. But that, from what I recall, just little semitone steps, and you're building it up, obviously, so it resolves with the choruses. John's making chords.
Mm-hmm.
I'm glad you like it, because to be honest, I think it's a bit of a masterpiece. You know, made every track with John, I think it's a great record. A sleeping giant. Not too many people picked up on it yet, to be quite honest, which doesn't upset me, or it's a proper record. A hell of a lot of work went into this.
Well, and that particular way of ending it, I don't know, it goes well with the tone as you're describing it of samsara versus the ethereal material world, as opposed to we're going to go into what you're calling, you know, the big guitar section and just end with a big blast of energy or something. It's a little puzzling. It's a little...
Well, it's a little bit unusual compared to most rock or pop constructions. As you go to the end, it's quite an interesting last third of the record. You're hearing the chorus come at you in various ways, and it's little step downs, and it's just almost prog rock, you could call it. You know, it's the kind of thing you might have heard in prog rock. You know, it's not your normal verse, chorus, middle eight, double chorus out. You know, it's quite an involved composition. As is right the way through that album, it's quite a clever, inventive arrangements and little cool things, little changes harmonically. You know, it's not what you'd think.
So speaking of subtle and ethereal, I wanted to get out another recent type of music that you were doing, a selection from the Bus Routes of South London. Also, 2023 release. I picked 21 Toward Lewisham Shopping Centre just because that's what you released as the single, presumably because it was a little shorter. It's not like these are going to get airplay. What is your thought about this tune and this?
Yeah, I can't remember that being released. Was that released as a single?
It is presented as its own, yes.
Yeah, I can't even remember. Yeah, it would have been because it's shorter, actually. That's why, you know.
Right.
And I think it's quite a reggae, from what I remember, that's quite a reggae vibe as well. It's quite a major key, I think. All this was, I just as before you phoned, I was making another album in that night. I make it on the iPad that I'm holding now, that we're doing this interview on. It's all done in there. And, you know, I recorded basically with that album. I went on the bus, number 21 bus. I went on various buses, mainly in South London, well, exclusively in South London, actually. And South London's an area, big area. I think there's more buses run there than New York, Paris and Moscow combined. You don't have the subway, you don't have to tube so much. in South London for various reasons. Part of it geological. The earth isn't suitable for tunnelling under. There are some tubes, but not anything like as much as north of the Thames. So you've got a lot of bus routes and overground trains. And I like walking, so I'd walk for miles, get on a bus, come back and make some musical sketches on the iPad. Just set a tempo, set a tune, very ambient. And then I put the bass down afterwards. But a lot of the tracks was actually worked out and put down actually on the bus.
Yeah, so this whole thing, the closest to reggae that we're going to hear on here, and you have got a lot of stuff that's sort of in this reggae adjacent space, but those particular synth sounds and it's a unique combination as far as that I've heard, and it's just a much more haunting take than the feel good or whatever.
Well, I'll tell you the story with it, how it came about. I've done records that have involved walking and I love walking. It brings this alpha wave thing out when you walk. I was kind of starting to do it. I didn't really think of doing an album as such. I wasn't sure what I'd do with it. And then this was all post-lockdown, COVID. So the buses were pretty empty, especially at night. And I took a bus back one night and there was no one else on the bus. I'm on the top deck. London buses have got 2 decks. I'm at the top deck. And I take a photograph. And I mean to take the photograph of the deserted street outside, but I also catch my own reflection in the window of the bus. And I thought, well, that's a really weird, evocative photograph. I posted it on social media and people loved it. Social media, you might put your latest track up and no one gives a shit. That often happens. But you'll post a picture of a dog or a picture of your dinner, people go mad for it. So everyone went mad for this photograph. And I thought, sort of onto something here, this noirish idea of a guy travelling across London, travelling across the city on his own, this lonely image. And it just captured something. And I thought, and that became the cover of the record. So the cover of the record existed before the record. And then I just thought, well, I'm doing all this recording on buses. Let's call it the bus route to South London. And it's very evocative. It's very ambienty. I've just been making a load of electronic music today. I love getting away from guitar. There's so much when you work with electronics, you can just do it yourself and not get involved with anybody else at all and layer this stuff up. And I'm making some more stuff today with an idea for a kind of concept with it as well. The record is pretty trippy. It's actually very simple, but the moods they're very subtly mixed together. It's mainly minor key and these lovely evocative electronic keyboards, hopefully, I think, mixed with a little bit of a reggae dubby vibe as well. So you've got a bit of that going on. Quite a musical album.
So do you recall on this, you at least used a real drummer? No, okay, so those are programmed.
I program them in, yeah. I sometimes record myself on a kit and loop it or whatever, but on this, I just electronic kit, me playing a virtual kit, with my fingers on the screen.
Okay, because that made me wonder. I mean, even though I picture you as this sort of guru of, I've got my bass line and I get talented people and I let them do whatever they want. The drums are so good on all your stuff.
My son's a good drummer, but I don't let people do what they want. No, that's kind of a lazy, this thing of just letting people express themselves. It's kind of toddlerish. So, no, it's a little bit more formulated than that. So when people, play it off, it's a bit like mantras. You have a certain key. There's conversations going on. It's definitely not just, oh, yeah, I'll just do a bass line. And then you can just play that and smoke some dope first. I don't have any of that. So I don't have people smoking dope before that hippie kind of thing or anything. There's not my cup of tea. So there's 2 strands with my music. One is more like a Rothko painting, if you like. So you've got the ocean, you've got the absolute. And that's where all the movement comes from. So we're back to the idea of stillness and movement, if you like. And that can be quite boring to people in a way, because it tends towards being formless. So there aren't particularly evolved melodies or evolved choruses. But that really is the ocean. That's the closest thing to the ocean of consciousness or the ocean of the witness of the presence, the divine presence, the Buddha nature. Linguistics are insufficient. But that center, the essence, is all pervasive, it's quiet, it's deep, and everything comes from there. And sometimes you do stuff that has that holy quality. So that's why when I'm listening to other people's music, I'll tend to listen to Arvo Part or various ambient musics that most people would probably find a bit boring because they're not exciting, they're not adrenalized, so much. So I tend to do that's the 2 sort of extremes. So one of them might be heavy duty bass, slow moving, something like Moo, possibly from the Moo album, that kind of thing. And then sometimes I'll do a lot of the music myself, but other times, you'll play with good players, but you give them skillful direction. Some people are so good, they're going to do the right thing, but I don't like the idea. I would hate you to think that, I just in a dip, just set up, play bass and you then let the people come and just jam. It's not my cup of tea at all. But obviously drums, I'm really into. My eldest boy is a pretty good drummer. So I just done an album producing Horace Andy with John Klein doing that as well. But my son plays drums all the way through. He's a really good drummer. So he's starting to take over a lot of the stuff. done a version of Superstition. It came out on Cleopatra yesterday, actually. So, he's playing more drums with me more and more. And often with the drums, I like my son's drums. He plays a hammer kit and it won't be bash, bash, bash. It's very like Jackie Liberzay. You could be in a room with Jackie. It wasn't tiring because it's in sympathy with the room, with the ambience, this lovely, just loud enough, very focused, very meditative. And my son's got a bit of that going on, for sure. I get fed up with people really smashing the bloody snare drum. But yeah, I love rhythms, I love drums. So I play a little bit myself, I play some percussion, and obviously I'm fascinated in how drums and rhythm ties in with bass, obviously.
So it seems like it might be a continuum between some things like this, that every single noise is coming out of you, and what are you programming with? Where are these synth sounds? There's something that really interesting. I, in fact, want to play with this one. How much effort is going into figuring out which sound or customizing it so that it gives this sloshy feel that you want?
I kind of feel for it. So, you'll find a preset and then mess with the preset often. I've got Roland rack-mounted keyboards. So I've got lots of sounds there. I've got a really nice weighted keyboard as well. And I've got Yamaha synths, so I've got various synths. I like Alchemy, in GarageBand. I like those synths. I think they're fantastic, actually. Both my sons were telling me that a lot of people listen to, a lot of people like Alchemy. So, they're good enough. Big regret is letting go of my Wasp synthesizer when I was back in PiL. It looked cheap, but very well made. You just slide your finger and you get a texture that's just this big, broad frequencies. And that's just as evocative as a guitar. And that sound, you got a little bit of delay, a little bit of reverb. There's a wistfulness to the sound. Often that'd be me take a preset and just mess with it. And there's various little effects I use and all that to tease these rather unusual sounds out. I suppose for me now it tends to feel reasonably easy, but that's been my life for decades, is creating these kinds of evocative sounds.
And are there any guitar or Chinese violin or something? There was another sound. Let me see if I can find it. Just this swooping thing. I mean, is this?
That's an app. Something. It's an app, but it's a mental. You can really manipulate it. So that's just like an app that I found. I do use. Funny enough, my younger son plays Chinese violin. So,
well, that's what I was. It sounds bowed.
yeah, he does a lot of slidey stuff. But that's a weird. Yeah, this weird app I've got, Geo something or other, and it's really a bit hit and miss. But when you tease it right, you can get this wonderful sounds out of it. Sounds really real, right? Sounds like a real instrument.
So for the most part, do you have your palette of sounds worked out so that you can just be a little spontaneous and play with those sounds? Or are you really doing it layer by layer and just like taking quite a while to figure out exactly what sound to put on? Or are you putting on a rough sound and then replacing it with a better sound later? What is when you're constructing yourself something like this? Any thought?
I work really fast. I work quickly. I don't have anything prepared. So that way you don't know what's going to come. So I'd sit on a bus with that record and just think, first of all, what's the tempo? And then you feel the atmosphere. And there's a poignancy when you're sitting on a bus. You're remembering things, and then you're looking at some old person who's struggling to get on the bus and obviously needs a hip replacement or something. And there's a sadness going on, that kind of thing. But then I have access to the sounds really quickly. I know what I want to use. What I liked about a lot of the reggae players, they wouldn't get too het up on sounds. You just kind of find it, that works, get it down, keep moving rather than get too precious about sounds. You develop a knack for getting the right sound pretty quickly and then dealing with that. Going back, I didn't bother going back to redo stuff. I would do but it was obviously impossible to sit on a bus and play a real bass. So I did the basses afterwards. So that would be done. And I sometimes would replace a program bass or a synth bass with a real bass for sure.
Well, let's get the third song out there. I really wanted to show something from your recent work with the Invaders of the Heart, more in the jazz area. So Fly Away, because it still has lyrics. It still has you doing this vocal layering, but it's got much less restrained instrumental approach. Can you say a little about, this is from the, released on the 2019 album Ocean Blue Waves. Can you say a little about it before we hear it?
Well, I was talking about this yesterday. It's a bit like Last Exit. It's one, I was talking to Mark, my drummer, and said, yeah, now you can spend so long crafting tracks. Is it worth it? Actual songs. You're probably better off, for me, just making left field records, because you put all this effort into crafting a song like Fly Away, and it done okay, washed its face, so it's fine. But you've obviously got great taste. Well done. Because, yet again, like Last Exit, most people wouldn't know it. First thing to say, it's in 5. It's 5/4 time. And the intro starts with, I think it's Yantin. My older boy, as well as playing drums, he plays Yantin. So Yantin's like a dulcimer. He plays Chinese drums in it as well with the band. Yeah, it's a lovely vocal on it. It's in a key that sort of suits me. I think it must have been around D, I guess. But the key sort of suited me. It's 5/4, but it's very smooth and comfortable. They're great players. I remember Martin Chung does a fantastic guitar solo in it as it comes out of all the choruses. And the thing it reminded me at the time, I remember thinking, this reminds me of something. Who did Pretzel Logic? Steely Dan, right? It reminded me a little bit of Steely Dan, the vibe.
Sadie, just run away. Don't come back another day. Sadie, just run away to the airport in the rain. Sadie, just run away. She must erase this pain. Sadie, just run away.
Any thought about this rhythm section construction, this bass line? Do, 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 do.
Just very simple. Mark's great. I think I got him to tone it down slightly. I might have even got him to play brushes on this, possibly. I think I got him to tone, because he's a very powerful drummer. Billy Cobham-like, he's got great technique. But I just want him to rein the dynamic down. So I think I might have got him to play brushes on it.
Well, you just have him not play some of the time. I see, so 105, I say full drums, interesting pattern. Let's see what this is. I don't think you would get that crispness on the hi-hat if that was brushes, but maybe it's plastics or something like that.
Yeah, it could be. Yeah, it might have been light. I remember it's a conversation we often have just to get just salting him, just lighten up a little bit. And also it means you take the dynamic down. It gives you somewhere to go with the dynamic as the tune goes on. But the other thing on it was the harmonies. I harmonised it. I love 5/4 time. I love that key, that kind of key. So it's perfect for my limited voice. And I layered up all the harmonies on it, spent time doing it. So it's very smooth. And the idea is just it's not really written about anyone specific, but it's the idea is someone running away and going to the airport, that thing of getting away, someone getting away from their life and starting again, probably Midwest of America, leaving the Midwest of America.
Even though I picked this to show off some of this sort of jazz stuff that you do, structurally, it's all still very tight. And a lot of it, the punctuation, I didn't mention in the last tune, the 21 toward Lewisham Shopping Center, the most powerful moments are when the bass just stops for a couple measures and then it gets to come back in. And we have a lot of that in Fly Away, where there's no drums, so you can actually hear the percussion. And now we come back and just the different layers.
It's something people don't do enough. I do it a lot live. I orchestrate the band live and I'll get them, so it's pretty tight, and I love that thing where you're suddenly take this big thing down to a small granular thing where maybe just a hi-hat's going or just a little picky guitar part. So the whole thing goes woof down into a small thing. Then you bring it back, woof, it comes up. It's like nuclear fusion or something. So yes, this song's very controlled. Great musicianship. George King, keyboard player, amazing player, very well-respected musician, and so good. He doesn't need to solo over everything, so just very tasteful. The chords are all worked out just so lovely. So it's one of my favourite tracks. And as I say, one where yesterday I was saying to Mark, well, I was, maybe feeling sorry for myself a little bit. What's the point, Mark? Honestly, what's the point of working on these songs? That Fly Away, what a great track. And there's a couple of good tracks on this album, actually, where you're singing, it's worked out. Well, it doesn't mean anything now. And if you said to me, what do you mean? Well, we've done these songs live a couple of times, but people want more the dub thing. They want stuff they're a bit familiar with. To be fair, they enjoy it when you're jamming something, you're making something new, some dub thing you're inventing. They'll love that. But these kind of songs get kind of lost along the way, actually. So they're great fun to make, and you always hope that maybe they'll get picked up as a sync one day. There's a part of me where over the years I've written some really good songs and no one's never really had people say, "Okay, you're not a bad songwriter, are you?" It's like, yeah, I'm not a bad songwriter. To be honest, this is why it's a nice interview. You picked up a couple of things. Most people would touch these tracks with a barge pole.
Well, I saw in the Bandcamp description of this that this was recorded, not the vocals, but the rest of it, just as sort of an afterthought when you had extra time during the Realm of Spells sessions. Is that right? So this was sort of a...
I forgot. Do you know what? I completely forgot that. Yeah, that's right. We've done Realm of Spells and I just had this rhythm going. That's right. And we've done it at Bill's studio. I think Bill wasn't there. So it was just quickly did it, I think, when all the mixing had finished or maybe before it started. And quickly put it down. And then, yeah, that's right. And so I think some of it was recorded in Brooklyn, in New Jersey, I think, actually. But I did the vocals in Manchester. And we did the rest of the album in Manchester as well.
So does that mean you were teaching at least the drummer sort of on the spot this part to play this? Or had you practiced this with the band? Was this sort of in the repertoire? Because it sounds like you didn't even have lyrics to it. So it certainly wasn't done.
No, it wasn't. I just think it would have been a really bass line. I like the vibe of it, and I would have got Mark to play it and rein it down a little bit. John would have overdubbed the percussion he wasn't in America. He would have been in Manchester, my son. So that as well, you got those Chinese drums that gives it a lighter kind of feel. But Mark won't struggle with a 5/4 because they're used to me suddenly jamming up a fast 5/4 on stage or 7/4. He's very good with uneven time signatures. He's really good. It was more a case, I think, I could just hear it being not full blown. It was definitely, this is more of a song as we need to rein it down, have a lighter touch with it.
Rather than focus on more of the details of this, which there are some really fascinating arrangement choices, I wanted to look a little bit at the old stuff. So I'd chosen Blowout as remixed. The original single is from 1985, a completely different palette, right? You're not even playing actual bass on this. Do you remember this? You've chosen it for a couple of anthologies, so I assumed that this was one that you looked favorably on.
Oh, very much so. Yeah, I thought it was a really good song. And yet again, it's funny, you're tuning into the bitter side of me, the resentful side. These are great songs. A lot of people liked it. A lot of people like Blowout, but a lot of the music from the 80s didn't last really well. It was a particularly bad time for me, the mid-80s. It's really drinking, drugging, it wasn't good. And that was definitely affecting me. And it would have been on that session, actually, I think, at that time. It locked into place. Ollie Marland, who I was playing with a lot of the time, it just worked, great musician. And I also remember random memory is the wonderful guitar solo that Dave Maltby, otherwise known as Animal, did. And I give that little thing about the mist over the river, right? I think. Is that right? I think. Maybe I got the wrong bloody track, but I think I do a little spoken word.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. It's got sort of a Joy Division feel to the lyric. Like it's very much of that post-punk New Order sort of era, but with the original Joy Division, The Haunting. We don't hear anything like this vocal tone coming out of you these days.
Maybe I should go back to it. Maybe it works. But yeah, that's right. But I remember a great guitar solo and a really lyrical kind of feel. Like Ronnie Lane would have liked Animal as a guitarist, but he had quite a folk kind of mode at times. And it was kind of at odds with the rest of the track, but worked really well. Yeah, it was a big synth bass and lots of keys on it. I think Ollie might have played a bit of guitar on it as well. He was, a great musician. I think we did it at a studio I never used much, sort of West London, some sort of 16 track. I think it was with a female engineer, which was quite unusual in those days. So yeah, it wasn't a great time. Very, I was getting quite tortured, but maybe that was a good thing. It helped make an evocative track, I suppose.
Walked out
just made for you and me.
Yeah, so this very much sounds of its time, of 1985. Was pretty much the whole thing sequenced apart from the guitars?
Yeah, it had all been sequence mode. Yeah, very much so. MIDI and all that for sure. And I think Angus McKinnon helped me with the lyrics. He was an old friend of mine. I think time is tight, the dollar strong. Yeah, I think he helped me with the lyrics with it. And it was all programmed up, and we would have spent a bit of time in those days syncing all the MIDI up and getting it to run in time. Can't think what we would have used as an interface with the keys. And it would have been Cubase, probably, the recording, I would have thought. Everything programmed apart from the guitar and vocals.
So in programming, I mean, you were saying you were playing a lot with Ollie at the time. Was he in this group, or was this you doing more like what you do with the Lewisham, with the new stuff? And this is the first spark of you as an orchestrator going in and doing these layers and figuring out the drums exactly yourself? Or were you working with the keyboardist and the drummer to come up with these electronic parts?
We didn't have a drummer on that session. It's all programmed. I would have programmed the drums and the bass, I think. We had separate drum machines at the time, so it would have been a drum machine synced up, and I would have worked all the keyboard parts out with Ollie, I think, for that, probably. He was such a good player, you would have used him to help work the chords out. I think I probably had the melody. That's how it would have been. I mean, Animal would have been about. We would have done a lot of drinking on the session, I think. And I just heard on there, that's Ollie doubling up my vocals.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, could hear his voice on that. I forgot he sang on that as well.
And so this was right after doing the Bedroom album. So was it sort of that you're doing the sequencing at home and then you're bringing it into the studio, or are you just doing the whole thing paying by the hour, as they say?
I was doing stuff at home, yeah, absolutely. So I'd be making the rhythms and writing stuff at home for sure, and then bringing it in the studio. So Bedroom album was done sort of very early 80s, 81, 82, and then it came out. And then, I was still messing around with synths and drum machines in that sort of early mid-80s period. It became not a great time for real bass players, certainly not if you were doing heavy bass line stuff. You were very out of vogue at that point. So hence I was starting to use synth bass, which I quite liked anyway.
Well, and you're using it in a way that sounds like the lines that you write, not, dun, 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 which was the default for this time period. Mike and the Mechanics, or, Well,
that's right. Well, just before this interview, I'm working on some stuff that's got real bass and synth bass in tandem. So I still really like synth bass. One good thing about synth bass, you can go down to like the low B or C or whatever, and it's convincing. Whereas you go down to a low B, D, when you tune a real bass down, or you have a 6-string bass, it doesn't sound the same as the synth bass, actually.
Is that Animal, or is that...
That's Animal.
It's a very thin little part.
It's all these years later, I can still remember. I can remember how I felt. I was under the influence at the time, and I remember, just very could see the scene of a lake with a mist on it or something, even though we were in some little studio. I can't remember the studio, somewhere in West London. I didn't particularly like the place, like a demo studio, actually, really. But I used to love walking by the Thames at the time, and I still do. And I think that's what I was thinking of, the mist. You get a mist over the water sometimes. So I was thinking of all that stuff. You know, that's what the lyrics, and got him to play with that kind of vibe. And he did, yeah, it's a lovely little solo, actually.
And this seems to be one of the only ones I noticed that you had revisited for a remix. Do you even recall? I mean, was it just tweaking the EQs? Like, it says remix on the...
Yeah, vaguely. I think I really liked it and wanted to do more with it. There was another tune I've forgotten, which is on Neon Moon. That's a similar, great little song, but I would have thought it had mileage, but I don't think it did much at the time. I think we did a couple of different versions on record, and it done all right. It was okay. It was later on the years that quite a few people came back who liked it, had a little following that track. It's seen as, a lot of people have picked up on it over the years as a little gem.
I was just trying to focus on, for this anthology, 1978 through 2015, if you somehow actually had the original tracks and decided for this one, you didn't want the one that was released, you actually wanted it remixed then.
Oh, no. The remix would have been done at the time.
Oh, okay. All right. So this is not quite as...
Maybe someone else did the remix. I can't even remember.
Well, it doesn't sound very different from the original to me. It's just a little brighter. All right. Well, to wrap up here, thanks so much for your time. I have really enjoyed... Of course, I didn't get to listen to everything in your catalog. I tried to do that, but there's so much of it. But you were so helpful to have all these collections, so I could see, okay, which in your mind rose to the top, so that definitely guided my choices of what to have on here. I didn't want to leave here without, we're going to briefly introduce, say goodbye, and then it will play in full the original versions of Visions of You by Jah Wobble's Invaders of the Heart from Rising Above Bedlam, 1991. Sinead O'Connor, within a year of her passing away, not returned to this. And yeah, this seemed like, I could have played this as the intro, that it seemed like this did as well as the Public Image thing, right? Or was sort of the height of your commercial success?
Well, let me get this straight.
As a solo artist?
Start with Public Image. That track went into the top 10. So it's been 50 years of a very graceful decline commercially for me. Visions went in the charts. I don't think it went in that high, but it was definitely like top 20. And thought, I'll never bother about any of that stuff. It was a really great track. We had Rise Above Bedlam, we had a sound, we had a bit of a following, but we needed a single. And Sinead volunteered, she wanted to sing with us, she really liked us. So I was in a lovely position of being able to write a track for Sinead with her voice in mind. So I can remember this probably, I've told the story so many times. So I had a Porter studio, the same Porter studio I'd done the bedroom album on, I think. And I started out with a bass line somehow. And I just had that, I was listening to a lot of mantras at the time, and was spiritualized was Advaita Vedantic kind of vibe going on. And so, it's I love you. Again, it's a semitone sort of step down, in it. Visions of you. That just came almost in a dream, that came to me, and I could see the visions, and it goes with a drone. I love drones. And so it's this lovely, simple little bass line. I love visions of... Very simple. And that's the chorus, which you could listen like a mantra over and over again. She sung it beautifully. So when I wrote it, I was thinking of Sinead O'Connor's voice very clearly. I could literally hear her singing it already, before she actually went in to do it. And then with the rest of the words, obviously about recovery from the booze and one thing and the other. I'm not numbed out anymore. No longer feel the hate and pain. No longer drinking shame. I'm not numbed out anymore. Now I own the key to the door. The kingdom of heaven lies inside. Makes a circle with the turning tide. So that in a way is to do with the heart and the mind. So the restless mind finds rest in this, this absolute presence again, if you like. They mix of the heart and mind, they meet. The kingdom of heaven. So this thing of sinking the mind, the person, the individual person into the presence of the divine. Yet again, I'm back to that thing of the ocean of absoluteness, losing yourself in that, like looking at a big Rothko painting or something, this absolute thing, the ocean. the death of the ego, if you like, all that stuff. So that's very much what this song's about.
Do you want to tell us, what are you working on right now? Are there 3 albums simultaneously in progress?
Yeah, it's 3. My sons, John and Charlie, they got a band, Tianqiyi, so they've got a new album coming out. They had an album last year I played on called Red Mist, and they're taking the mantle. They're great players, and they're off on their musical odyssey, as I'll probably be slowing down. So we got that. I'm doing an album with the 2 of them, a different kind of album, kind of off-the-wall dub album. But I've also working on another ambient-y kind of record similar to Bus Routes in that line, very thematic, electronic, dubby, ambient sort of stuff. So they're the 3 things. And there's a Horace Andy album just out, which I'm playing on and co-produced and everything. And so that's out at the moment. And also, you're going to love it. There's a single coming out in a few weeks. I've done a version with John Klein of Start Me Up by the Rolling Stones. And I'm doing the lead vocal as well as playing. That could well end my career. And I might need to go and find an island to live on somewhere. I would have lost all credibility and people want to harm me when they hear that. So it might be an idea for me to go and live on an island somewhere. But that was fun. That was for Cleopatra as well. I loved it. Don't you start me up. If you start me up, listen, don't get me started. That's the vocal.
All right. Well, looking forward to that. Thanks so much.
Thanks, Mark. Thanks very much.
Thanks so much to Jah. As I think I mentioned, I spent a lot of time making my way through his very thorough and recently revised autobiography, which he actually reads, called Dark Luminosity. And despite Jah's very large output, as I also mentioned, he has several compilations that make it very easy to just get a track from this project, the ones that he regards as the best. So you can look them up on your streaming services or go to jahwobble.com. And it is wonderful to hear Sinead sing on that last track. I recall somebody telling me several years ago, hey, I'm a really good personal friend of Sinead O'Connor. I can get her to come on your show. And for various reasons, I didn't press him. Nothing really came of it. And I really regret that at this point. I have, however, since this interview, interviewed David Nagler, a very interesting, largely keyboard-oriented singer-songwriter, though he also plays guitar, and really sharp guy. And just this week, I spoke to Amy Rigby, another wonderful singer-songwriter. In both these cases, though the interview is offered by one of my regular promo people that I work with, David plays with Wesley Stace, a.k.a. John Wesley Harding, had co-written his last album. So I already knew about him through that, had even talked about one of the songs that he wrote. And Amy is married to Reckless Eric, someone who I had on the show this year, who's recorded some collaborative albums with Amy and who backs her up on some of the songs that we're going to talk about in her interview. So stick around for those things. You can subscribe directly to the Nakedly Examined Music podcast if you are not already via nakedlyexaminedmusic.com or most of the streaming services. I would love if you would leave a nice rating and review if you're up for it for the show. It juices the algorithm, helps get more exposure to the show. And perhaps more effectively, find a favorite episode, send it to a friend, post it on your social media. I love doing this. I would love to spread the word more widely about some of these great, great musicians that I have on the show. I hope if you like their work that you will support them in some way. And I hope if you enjoy the show, you will support the show at patreon.com/nakedlyexaminedmusic. Or if you want to support all my side projects, and you're using Apple Podcasts, you can just click the subscribe button and it'll charge you a little monthly fee and you'll get ad-free versions of 3 of my podcasts. I don't know if I've mentioned on this show, I'm teaching a philosophy class this fall, Big Books in Continental Philosophy. Time is ticking very quickly down to where people really need to be registered if they are going to be. You can learn about that and just go ahead and enroll at partiallyexaminedlife.com/class. And if you don't know why I would be saying this, didn't know that I do a philosophy podcast, look around at partiallyexaminedlife.com. It's sort of the center of all the work that I do. I invite you to reach out to me through email, say mark@nakedlyexaminedmusic.com, or through Facebook or Twitter to say hi, tell me how you like the show, suggest a guest, suggest yourself as a guest. Love to hear from you folks. Hope you're all doing well. Keep on musicking. Until next time, this is Mark Lintonmeyer signing off.